No one believed it when she walked through that door. The maid, the invisible woman, the one who cleaned their floors, now entered the most exclusive room in the city. They had invited her as a joke, to laugh, to humble her. But when she appeared, silence fell like glass rain. An emerald green dress, made by her own hands, her gaze firm like someone who never forgot who she is, and the young woman who had mocked her felt something she had never known: shame. Like this, if it touched your soul. It is more than a click, it is a silent hug. Comment how you think this story will end, and if you have not subscribed yet, it costs you nothing, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you for being here. The huge crystal light in the main hall reflected the afternoon light like 1,000 small suns. Lucy Miller moved the cloth up and down with precise, careful, almost holy movements. At 34, she had learned that every bright surface had its own language, its own need for patience. From the next room came loud laughs. They were not laughs of pure joy, but that kind of laugh that needs an object, a target, someone to land on like a bird of prey. Can you believe it? The voice of Chloe Reed went through the walls as if they were paper. Mom decided to invite Lucy to the charity ball. Lucy did not stop cleaning the glass. Her hands did not shake. Her breath did not change. She had learned since she was a girl, watching her grandmother, who was a tailor in Chicago, that dignity is an inner strength that no one can tear down, unless you open the door yourself. Lucy! The maid! One of the friends screamed on the other side of the phone. Chloe broke out in a new wave of cruel fun. Yes, the same one. Mum said that everyone deserves to dream. The young woman copied her mother's tone with a gross exaggeration. But imagine her at the Plaza Hotel, with a long dress trying to figure out which fork to use. It is cute, isn't it? The laughs grew. Lucy came down slowly from the ladder, the cleaning cloth folded with precision between her fingers. It was not anger she felt. It was something older, deeper, memory. The memory of who she had been before life took an unexpected turn, before her mother got sick, before dreams had to be kept in wooden boxes. Lucy, Chloe called her with that fake sweetness that some people mistake for elegance. You got the invitation for the ball, right? Are you really going to go? Lucy stopped at a respectful distance, with her hands together in front of her white apron. Her gaze was calm, clear like spring water. Yes, Miss Chloe, Mrs. Reed was very kind to invite me. Chloe crossed her legs with studied elegance, the polish on her nails shining like small shields of arrogance. I just want to make sure you know it is a formal dress code. Long dress, high heels, jewelry. She made a tasty pause, enjoying every sound. We don't want you to feel out of place. Lucy held the gaze without blinking, without lowering her head, without shrinking. Thank you for the concern, miss. I will keep it in mind. She turned around with calm movements, without hurry, without flight. And as soon as she crossed the door to the hall, the laughs exploded again, louder, more free, more cruel. She thought it was for real. Chloe almost screamed from laughing. My God, it is charming. Lucy kept walking down the long hall, her steps silent on the marble. On the outside, calm. On the inside, something had woken up. It was not revenge. It was not hate. It was the quiet choice of someone who knows the world is wrong, but does not scream to fix it. That night, in her small room in the back of the Reed mansion, Lucy closed the door with the care of someone who does not want to bother even the silence. Only there, alone with the shadows and the weight of the day, she let the air kept in her chest out slowly. She looked at her hands under the yellow light of the lamp, the light marks of cleaning products, the short and plain nails, the slightly dry skin. Then she looked up at the small mirror over the sink, a cheap mirror bought at a market, which showed an image that the world wanted to make small, to make simple, to label. But Lucy Miller was not just that. Before life turned in an unexpected way, before having to leave New York to care for her sick mother, she had studied fashion design at the School of Design. She had worked as a style assistant in photo shoots. She had known the back of fashion shows, the sweet smell of new fabrics, the silky feel of satin between her fingers. She had been to events where people held glass cups, while they talked about trends and empty life with the same lightness. Even though she had traded runways for waxed floors, galleries for service stairs, she had never lost something that cannot be bought in any shop: posture. That invisible spine that keeps the soul straight, even when the body bends to clean. She knelt by her narrow bed and took out an old box she kept underneath, covered by a torn blanket. The box smelled like wood and fresh memories. When she opened the lid with respect, an almost holy silence appeared. Between pieces carefully folded, wrapped in thin paper, an emerald green dress came out. It was not from Chanel. It was not from Dior. It did not have a famous designer label. It was unique, created by herself years ago, stitch by stitch, sewn for weeks of endless nights, with a cut that knew her body as if it were a second skin. It had been made for a college show that never happened. It had been kept like someone keeps a dream on hold, waiting for the time to wake up. Lucy touched the fabric with the tips of her fingers, feeling every fiber, every fold. In that touch, there was memory, talent, identity. There was a version of herself that the world had stopped seeing, but that had never stopped existing. "You are still here," she whispered to the dress, as if it were a living thing. Mrs. Beatrice Reed was not like her daughter. At 62, she had learned that true elegance is not measured in gold or last names, but in the ability to see people beyond their situation. She had watched Lucy for months, with an attention that was not pity but truly curious. She noticed how the young woman spoke, with perfect grammar, with a wide vocabulary, with a tone that showed education. She noticed how she thanked every gesture, never with low spirit, but with real politeness. How she moved through the house without making extra noise, but without shrinking, without making herself small. One afternoon, while Lucy fixed the flowers in the dining room with a beauty that went beyond just work, Mrs. Beatrice stopped at the door. "You have a good eye for art," she said softly. Lucy looked up, surprised to be seen for real, not just noticed. "My grandmother was a tailor, ma'am. She taught me that beauty is in balance." Mrs. Beatrice smiled, and it was not the polite smile of someone doing a social duty. It was real, warm. "Lucy, the charity ball this year is in 3 weeks. I would like you to be there, as a guest, not as staff." Lucy lowered the cutting tools. Her eyes got wet just for a moment before she got her calm back. "Mrs. Beatrice, it is not charity, dear, it is recognition. I have seen how you look at the fashion magazines Chloe leaves around. I have noticed how you touch the fabrics. I know there is more in you than what this job lets you show." She made a meaningful pause. "The world is full of people with titles and no heart. You have heart. You deserve to be in that room as much as anyone." The words floated in the air like petals falling slowly. Lucy felt something break inside her chest, but it was not a break, it was an opening, a rusty door that finally gave way. "Thank you, ma'am. I will go." That night, Chloe heard the talk from the hall, and instead of understanding, instead of learning, she felt threatened, as if the inclusion of Lucy was her own exclusion, as if the world were a small space where the dignity of one meant the loss of the other. The days that followed were strange, tight, full of an invisible electricity. Chloe began to say more mean things, hints, looks of hate barely hidden. She asked Lucy for extra tasks, last-minute changes, silly fixes, as if she could tire her out, break her, make her quit. But Lucy had grown up watching her grandmother sew wedding dresses for ladies who barely looked at her in the eyes. She had learned that being humble is not being low, that serving is not being lesser, that honest work never stains the hands, it only makes them strong. At night, after finishing all her tasks, Lucy went up to her room and worked on the dress. She cleaned it with care, checked it stitch by stitch, changed 2 buttons that could barely be seen, fixed the length with perfect detail. She washed her hair with a special soap she had kept for times that never came. She practiced hairstyles in front of the small mirror, watching videos on her old phone with a cracked screen. She did not do it for revenge. She did it to remember herself. One afternoon, while she ironed Mr. Reed's shirts, Chloe walked into the laundry room with 2 friends. They talked loud, on purpose. "My dress is from Valentino. It came yesterday from Milan." One of them bragged. "Mine is from Elie Saab. Mum ordered it 3 months ago," added the other. Chloe looked at Lucy from the side, waiting to see her get small, compare herself, give up. And you, Lucy, do you have a dress for the ball yet? Lucy did not look up from the shirt she ironed with careful focus. Yes, Miss Chloe, I have one. What brand? The question was a poisoned dart. From my own creation. The silence that followed was heavy, awkward. The friends traded looks, hiding laughs. Chloe smiled with a cruelty she thought was victory. How charming. I'm sure it will be unique. Lucy finished ironing the shirt, folded it with perfect precision, and left the room without saying anything else, because there are answers that do not need words. They only need time. The Plaza Hotel, grand and white like a marble dream in the heart of the city, was getting ready to receive the best of society. The charity ball this year would raise money for school programs for young people in need. White flowers decorated every corner, old lights hung from the roof like stars, and the smell of roses mixed with the smell of hope. Lucy spent that day doing her usual tasks in the Reed mansion. She cleaned, organized, made dinner, ironed. But there was something different in her movements, a peace that came from her like silent light. It was not nerves she felt. It was pure hope, the feeling of being about to get back a part of herself that had stayed asleep too long. In the afternoon, Mrs. Beatrice looked for her in the kitchen. Lucy, tonight I want you to go straight to the hotel. You don't have to do anything here. Take the day for yourself. Ma'am, It is not a suggestion, dear. Mrs. Beatrice put a soft hand on Lucy's shoulder. It is an order. And take this. She held out an envelope. Inside was enough money for a taxi, a beauty visit, and more. I cannot accept this, ma'am. Of course you can, and you will, because tonight you will not be the Reed's maid. You will be Lucy Miller, guest of honor, and I want you to feel like it. Lucy's eyes filled with tears that she did not let fall, but Mrs. Beatrice saw them anyway. There was so much in due look. Thanks, yes, but also the silent pain of someone who has been invisible for too long and suddenly is seen, really seen. Thank you, Lucy whispered, and that one word held worlds. That night, Lucy barely slept, not from worry, but from that bright energy that comes before the moments that change the path of a life. She got up before the sun, when the city still slept under a dark blue sky, and started to get ready with the detail of someone who knows that every small thing tells a story. The beauty shop was small but clean, run by a woman named Rosa, who had spent 30 years making women from all over town beautiful. When Lucy walked in with her simple bag and her firm gaze, Rosa knew right away she was looking at someone special. What do you need, honey? I have an event tonight. Something important. Rosa studied Lucy's face with the eyes of an artist. The strong cheekbones, the perfect eyebrows, the clear skin with no marks, the well-shaped lips. It was a face that did not need much, only to be shown off. You have a classic beauty, did you know? The kind that never goes out of style. Sit down. During the next hours, Rosa worked like someone carving stone. She washed Lucy's hair with soaps that smelled like flowers, massaged her head until all the weight seemed to melt away. She cut the ends with care, shaped the natural waves until they fell like soft water over her shoulders. The makeup was light, but changed everything. Earth tones that made the dark eyes shine, a touch of red that shaped the cheeks, lips in a soft tone with just a bit of shine. You don't need masks, Rosa said while she put on the last bit of eye makeup. You only need them to see you. When Lucy looked in the mirror, she did not know herself right away. Not because she was another person, but because she was herself, finally. The version that had always existed under the uniforms, under the tired days, under the labels others had put on her. Thank you, she said, touching her face with wonder. Don't thank me. Just promise me that tonight you will walk with your head held high, Bav. I promise. Back in her small room, with the sun setting over the city in orange and purple tones, Lucy took the emerald green dress out of the box for the last time. She hung it with care, let the evening light touch it, showing every shade of the fabric, every point of the sewing she had done with her own hands years ago. She showered with warm water, letting the steam wrap around her like a holy rite. She put on cream on every inch of skin, perfume on her wrists and behind her ears. A cheap but nice perfume her mother had given her years ago, and that she had saved for a special time. She put on simple but pretty underwear, thin skin-tone socks, the gold shoes she had bought on sale and had never used. Finally, the dress. She put it on slowly, feeling the fabric slide over her body like cool water. The cut was perfect, tight on the top, showing the waist, falling in a smooth skirt that touched the floor with grace. The neck was simple but elegant, showing the collarbones without showing too much. The long lace sleeves ended at the wrists, giving a touch of classic romance. She looked at the small mirror, which now seemed too small to hold the whole image, and for the first time in 5 years, Lucy Miller saw herself not as a maid, not as a caregiver, not as a survivor. She saw herself as the woman she was, whole, talented, worthy. From the bottom of the box she took one last treasure, a pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. They were not expensive pearls, but they were real, old, with that soft shine that only time and love can give. She put it on her neck, and it was as if her grandmother were there, whispering in her ear, "Never forget who you are, girl, never." It was 7 in the evening. The ball started at 8. The taxi left her in front of the Plaza Hotel just as the first stars began to show in the sky. The building shone with lights, its towers standing out against the dark blue of the night. A red carpet went from the street to the main door, with photographers, news people, and curious people who had come to see the elite walk by. Lucy paid the driver, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. The October air was cool, but not cold. Perfect. When her feet touched the red carpet, something changed in the air. It was not a loud silence, it was not a group of shouts. It was something softer and more powerful. It was attention, real, pulling, unavoidable attention. The photographers, trained to know famous faces and brand names, caught her with their cameras almost by feel. The emerald green dress shone under the flashes without screaming, without begging for eyes. It simply deserved them. The cut was so perfect, so unique, that many photographers asked themselves which designer made it. What star that unknown but unforgettable woman was. Lucy walked with measured steps, without hurry, without doubt. Her posture was perfect, shoulders back, chin up naturally, looking forward. She did not force a smile for the cameras like some guests did. Her face was calm, controlled, elegant, as if she had walked on red carpets all her life. Because, in a way, she had. In another life, in another version of herself that had never died, only been waiting. Inside the hotel, the main room was a dream of marble, gold, and light. The high roofs were decorated with old art. The lights hung like giant glass spiders, reflecting thousands of points of light. Round tables covered with ivory cloths were spread out, each with flowers that must have cost more than Lucy's monthly pay. The band played a soft song. Servers with white gloves walked with trays of drinks and snacks. And everywhere, beautiful people. Women in high-fashion dresses, jewelry that sparkled like small worlds, men in perfect suits, expensive watches on their wrists. Chloe Reed was near the door, with her usual circle of friends. She wore a red Valentino dress that cost more than $10,000, Louboutin shoes, a diamond necklace her mother let her use. She felt unbeatable, bright in her place. "Do you see that guy over there? He's the son of a big diplomat. I think he is looking at me," one of her friends whispered, excited. "Well, go and say hi. Tonight anything is possible." Chloe answered with the confidence of someone who has never doubted her place in the world. And then Lucy walked into the room. It was not like in the movies where the whole room stops and the music cuts off loudly. Real life is softer, more complex. But there was something. A wave in the air, like when a stone touches the top of a quiet lake and makes circles of movement. The talks went on, the music kept playing, the servers kept walking. But the eyes began to turn, one by one, quiet at first, then more open. The whispers started to grow like a collective sound. "Who is she? I haven't seen her before. That dress is amazing. Which house is it from?" Lucy walked through the room with the same calm she had entered with. She did not look for a yes in the faces that watched her. She did not need outside proof. She walked like someone who knows exactly who she is and does not need to show it to anyone. And that safety, that realness, was more pulling than any brand dress or any famous name. Chloe felt the change in the air before she saw her. She felt how her friend's eyes moved toward the door, how the talks around her got quieter, how someone was catching the attention that she thought was hers by right. She turned around, and her whole world stopped. It was impossible. It was silly. It was Lucy. But it was not the Lucy who cleaned the floors of her house. It was not the Lucy who ironed her shirts. It was not the Lucy who lowered her head and said, "Yes, miss," to every order. This was another Lucy, or maybe the real Lucy, the one who had always existed under the uniform and the labels. The emerald green dress flowed like liquid water, reflecting the light of the lamps in tones that went from deep green to gold. The cut was perfect, professional, worthy of any runway in Paris or Milan, and Lucy wore it with a natural way that cannot be bought, cannot be faked, cannot be copied. Her hair fell in soft waves over her bare shoulders, framing a face that suddenly seemed carved by a master artist. The makeup was perfect, quiet but changing, showing off every part without hiding anything. And her eyes, those eyes Chloe had seen thousands of times but never really looked at, shone with a brain and a depth that were impossible to ignore. "It can't be," whispered one of Chloe's friends, with her drink held halfway to her lips. Is that her?" asked another, unable to understand the jump between the maid and this elegant vision. Chloe could not speak. For the first time in her life, the words were stuck in her throat. She felt a mixed mess of feelings, shame, doubt, anger, and something deeper, more awkward. The feeling of having really missed who someone was. The feeling of having been cruel to a person who deserved respect. The feeling that her own world, built on shallow things, was showing itself to be weak. Mrs. Beatrice appeared at that moment, moving with the grace of someone who knows these places since childhood. Seeing Lucy, her face lit up with a real, warm, motherly smile. "Lucy, dear." She came close and took both the young woman's hands in hers. "You look absolutely bright. Come, I want to show you to some people." And with that simple move, Mrs. Beatrice was doing something big. She was publicly saying Lucy belonged there not as a pity guest, not as a social test, but as an equal. As someone who deserved to be there as much as any rich person in that room. The first person Mrs. Beatrice showed Lucy to was James Monroe, head of a famous art museum, a man of 60 with silver hair and eyes that had seen thousands of works of art, but still lit up at real beauty. "James, this is Lucy Miller. Lucy, James is in charge of some of the most important modern art shows in the country." James held out his hand with real politeness. "A pleasure, Lucy. That dress is a work of art. May I ask who designed it?" Lucy shook his hand with soft strength, looking him straight in the eyes. "Thank you. I designed it myself." The man raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Really? Did you study design? In Chicago some years ago?" Lucy did not go into details about why she had left the course, why she had to change her life. It was not shame. It was just not needed. Fashion design at the School of Design. It shows. The cut, the choice of color, the way the fabric falls. It is the work of a professional. James studied her with new interest. "Have you thought about going back to your career?" Lucy felt something move in her chest. A door she had thought closed forever was starting to open a bit. "I have thought about it. Life has ways of pushing us off the path, but maybe it is never too late to go back." "It never is," James said with firm belief. "You should come to the museum. We are getting ready for a show about where fashion and art meet. I would love to know your view." He gave her his business card. Lucy took it with hands that did not shake, though inside she felt like she was receiving much more than a piece of paper. She was receiving a chance, a well done, a proof that her talent had not died. It had just been sleeping. The talk flowed naturally toward modern art. Lucy spoke about textures and unusual materials, about how art should face things instead of just being nice. She mentioned classic designers and their understanding of shape. She quoted how fashion should be an architecture for the body. James listened with wonder. It was not common to find someone at these events who spoke with such depth and heart, without the empty acting that often filled social talks. From the other side of the room, Chloe watched the scene with a mix of doubt and something that looked dangerously like envy. How was it possible that Lucy, her maid, was talking as an equal with one of the most respected museum people in the country? How was it possible that she seemed so at ease, so in her place? Chloe, one of her friends, touched her arm softly. "Do you know that woman?" Chloe swallowed, pride and shame fighting a silent war inside her. She is someone who works at my house." The answer came out almost as a whisper. "Works at your house?" The friend looked at her confused. "As what? A consultant? A decorator?" Chloe did not answer. She could not say the word maid without it sounding like a point against herself, without showing how wrong she had been, how cruel she had been. In the meantime, Mrs. Beatrice kept leading Lucy through the room. The next meeting was with Sophie Hill, a rising fashion designer who had gained fame for a green and ethical approach to fashion. Sophie was 38, had short silver hair, and her green eyes studied the world with endless curiosity. "Sophie, this is Lucy Miller. She designed that grand dress herself." Sophie came close right away, walking around Lucy like someone checking a statue in a museum. "My God, this is—" She touched the fabric lightly with silent permission. "What fabric is this?" "Wild silk mixed with rayon," Lucy answered without stopping. "I bought it at a textile market in Chicago years ago. I dyed it myself to get exactly this tone." "You dyed this yourself?" Sophie looked at her with new respect. "Do you know the hard work of getting an emerald green so even? Most designers don't even bother. They just buy the fabric already dyed." "My grandmother taught me. She sewed wedding dresses and believed that a real artist must know every step of the process, from the fiber to the final product." Sophie nodded with joy. "Exactly. That is the idea I try to show in my work. Fast fashion has made us lose that link with the materials, with the process." She paused, studying Lucy with focus. "What do you do now?" It was the unavoidable question. Lucy could lie. She could dodge. She could build a more acceptable version of her life. But Mrs. Beatrice had taught her something big that night. Dignity does not come from hiding who you are, but from holding every part of your story without shame. "Currently, I work in domestic service," Lucy said with a clear, firm voice without looking down. "But I studied fashion design, and I'm thinking about going back to my career." Sophie did not show surprise or awkwardness. Instead, she smiled with understanding. "Life takes us down strange paths, doesn't it? I worked as a waitress for 3 years while I built my brand. There is no shame in honest work, only in how we treat those who do it." She took out her phone. "Give me your contact. I'm looking for people to work with on a new line. People who understand both the skill and the ethics behind fashion. I think you could be perfect." Lucy felt the floor under her feet become more solid, as if every talk was a brick, rebuilding the base of a future she had thought lost. They traded numbers. Sophie promised to call her the next week, and the talk turned to topics of green production, fair trade, and the social impact of the textile industry. Lucy spoke with deep knowledge, quoting numbers on labor in overseas factories, mentioning organic fiber choices, questioning the season model that made massive waste. It was not a shallow talk to impress. It was a woman with heart for a topic she knew, that she had studied, that she truly cared about. Around her, other guests began to come close, pulled by the energy of the talk. A business owner from the textile sector, a fashion news person, someone interested in job training projects. Everyone wanted to know more about that unknown woman who spoke with such power and grace. Dinner was served with the usual style of these events. First plate of salmon tartar, second of steak with wine sauce, dessert of chocolate mousse with gold. Every bite was a small food work of art, but for Lucy the real food was not the meal but the talks. She had been placed at a table next to Mrs. Beatrice, James Monroe, Sophie Hill, and other figures from the cultural and business world. Chloe was at a different table, closer to the stage where the charity speech would happen, but from where she could see Lucy perfectly. During dinner, an older man named Edward Smith, co-founder of a big image consulting firm, leaned toward Lucy with real interest. Beatrice has told me you have an exceptional eye for visual art. Have you worked in image consulting before? Not as a job, Lucy said, but I worked as a style assistant in photo shoots during my studies. I learned that image is not just pretty clothes, it is communication. Every color sends a message. Every cut of a piece tells a story about who wears it. Edward nodded, clearly impressed. Exactly. Most people think our work is shallow, but image is language. It is how we show ourselves to the world before saying a single word. He took a sip of wine. We are growing our personal consulting wing. We work with bosses, politicians, people changing careers. We need people with cultural feel, with understanding of different social worlds. He gave her his card, the third one Lucy received that night. Call me next week. I would like you to come to the office, to meet the team. I don't promise anything, but I think you could fit well. Lucy took the card with firm hands, though inside she felt as if she were in a dream she did not want to wake up from. In one single night, doors were opening that she had thought locked forever, not by magic, not by luck, but because she had finally let herself show who she really was. While they served dessert, the person in charge of the event went up to the stage to talk about the goal of the night, to raise money for a program that gave job training to young people from poor areas, helping them get good jobs and break cycles of poverty. Lucy listened with special focus. She knew that world from up close, not as an outsider, but as someone who had been at the edge of that cliff, who understood what it meant to have talent without chances, to have dreams without ways to make them real. When the speaker mentioned they were looking for helpers for mentoring, professionals willing to share their knowledge and networks with these young people, Lucy felt something light up in her chest. Maybe her own experience, her own path from college rooms to service rooms and now back to this hall, could serve for something bigger than herself. At the end of the speech, they showed a video with stories from young people in the program. Different faces, stories of getting through, dreams found again. Several guests dried tears quietly. Lucy stayed calm, but her eyes shone with deep feeling. Mrs. Beatrice, sitting next to her, whispered, "These kids remind me of you. Hidden talent waiting to be found." "I'm not hidden, Mom," Lucy answered softly. "I was just waiting for the right time to remember who I am." After dinner, the room changed. The tables were partly moved to make a dance floor. The band began to play more upbeat pieces, a waltz, then some soft jazz, then more modern rhythms. Couples began to dance. The talks broke into smaller groups. The drinks kept flowing. Lucy was by one of the high windows, watching the city lit up under the starry night, when she felt someone come close. She did not need to turn to know who it was. The expensive perfume, the slightly fast breath, the tension clear in the air. "Lucy." Chloe's voice sounded different, without the usual arrogance, without the playful cruelty. There was something else. Doubt, shame, badly hidden. Lucy turned slowly, with the same calm she had kept all night. "Miss Chloe." Don't call me that, not now." Chloe looked around, making sure no one heard. I need to talk to you." "I am listening." There was a heavy, loaded silence. Chloe looked for the right words, something she had not had to do very often in her life. Words had always come easy, fast, sharp to her, but now each one weighed like a stone. "I didn't know," she started, then stopped, fixing the sentence. "No, that is not true. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to really see you." Lucy waited without stopping her. She was not going to make this easy, not out of cruelty, but because some lessons are only learned when one has to go through them fully, without shortcuts. "Tonight I realized something," Chloe went on, her voice lower. "I have treated people by their job, by their clothes, by where they live or what name they have, and I have lost the chance to know real, valuable, interesting people. Like me." Lucy finished the sentence without bitterness, simply stating a fact. "Like you." Chloe nodded, her eyes red. "I treated you as if you were invisible. Even worse, I treated you as if you were less than me. And I did it knowing I was hurting you. I did it because it made me feel better than you." It was the most honest thing Chloe had said in her life. It cost to say every word, as if she were pulling something out of her chest. "And now," asked Lucy, "now that you have seen this dress, that you have heard these talks, that you have seen that there are important people who respect me, now am I worthy of your care?" The question was a mirror, and Chloe saw herself in it, shallow, judgy, cruel. She did not like what she saw. "It's not fair," Chloe answered weakly. "No," Lucy agreed. "It is not fair. It is not fair that you needed to see me here, in this dress with these people, to realize I deserve basic respect. That respect I should have had always in your house with the uniform on, cleaning the floors you made dirty without a thought." Chloe looked down, unable to hold Lucy's quiet but firm eyes. "I know, and I am sorry. I know saying sorry doesn't erase anything I did, anything I said, but I needed to say it to you." Lucy took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of that moment, the importance of how she chose to answer. She could be cruel. She could humble Chloe the same way she had been humbled. It would be easy, it would even feel good. But then she would be just like her, keeping the same cycle of pain going. "I accept your apology," she said finally. "Not because I forget what happened, but because we both deserve to move forward. You deserve the chance to be better, and I deserve not to carry the weight of your cruelty anymore." "Thank you," Chloe whispered, and there was something real in her voice, something broken and humble that had never been there before. "But Chloe," Lucy added, her voice soft but firm, "this is not just about me. It is about how you treat all the people you think are below you. The gardener who cares for your garden, the driver who takes you to your parties, the cook who makes your food. Everyone deserves dignity, not because one day they might surprise you in a pretty dress, but simply because they are human beings." The words floated between them like seeds planted in fertile ground. Chloe nodded slowly, and for the first time in her life she seemed truly small, not from shame but from newly found humility. "You are right," she admitted, "and I am going to try to be different. I don't promise to be perfect, but I am going to try. It is all anyone can do," Lucy answered with kindness. They looked at each other for one more moment, and there was something of peace in that silence, some mutual understanding. Then Chloe nodded one last time and walked away, leaving Lucy by the window, alone with her thoughts and with the city lit up at her feet. The night kept going with the elegance of these events, but for Lucy it had gained an almost dreamlike quality. It was as if she was seeing her life from two views at once. The woman she had been for the last 5 years, invisible, silent, reduced, and the woman she had always been inside, capable, talented, whole. She had moved away from the crowd of the main room and found a side balcony less busy, where the cool night air wrapped around her softly. From there she could see the city streets lit up, the cars flowing like rivers of light, the nightlife of a city that never fully slept. She took her phone out of the small handbag, a vintage bag that had belonged to her grandmother, and called a number she knew by heart. After 3 rings, a tired but warm voice answered, "Lucy, are you okay, honey?" It was her mother, Rosa Miller, who lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Her health had gotten much better in the last year, but she still needed care, medicine that Lucy paid for monthly with her maid salary. "I am more than okay, Mom," Lucy answered, her voice full of held emotion. I am at the ball I told you about." "With the dress? With the dress you made years ago?" "Yes." Lucy touched the fabric softly, like someone touching a memory. "And Mom, people have noticed it. Designers, museum people, image experts. I have received 3 business cards, 3 chances." On the other side of the line she heard a muffled cry. "Your grandmother would be so proud, Lucy. So proud. She always said you had gold in your hands." "I know, Mom, and I think I am finally ready to believe it too." They talked for a few more minutes, Lucy describing the hotel, the talks, the moment with Chloe. Her mother listened with that focused silence only mothers know how to give, that silence that does not judge or advise, just holds and backs you up. "Do you know what is most strange?" Lucy said finally. During these 5 years, I told myself I had lost my chance, that it was too late, that I had taken a path with no way back. But tonight I realized I didn't lose anything. I was just waiting for the right time to get myself back. God's time is perfect, daughter, even if we don't understand it at the time. Lucy smiled, looking at the stars that blinked weakly over the glow of the city. I love you, Mum. Get some rest. Tomorrow I will tell you everything in more detail. I love you, my girl. And remember, you were always extraordinary. The dress just helped the others see it. When she hung up, Lucy stayed a few more moments on the balcony, letting herself feel all the weight and the lightness of that night. The weight of the years of invisibility, the weight of the silent shaming, the weight of the put-off dreams, but also the lightness of being free, the lightness of being seen, the lightness of knowing she was worthy. A voice stopped her from the balcony door. Are you hiding from the party? It was James Monroe, the museum man, with 2 glasses of drinks in his hands. Just getting some air, Lucy answered with a smile. I can leave if you prefer to be alone. No, please stay. James came close and offered her a glass. They toasted in silence, the glass making a delicate sound. You know, James said after a sip, I have been going to these events for 30 years, and if I am honest, most are terribly boring. The same faces, the same shallow talks, the same social acts. But every now and then someone appears who reminds you why it's worth keeping coming. Someone like who? Someone like you. James looked at her with clear truth. Someone who is not here to be seen but to be herself. There is a huge difference. Lucy felt a real warmth in her chest, not the warmth of empty praise, but of being known in her core. Thank you. That means more than you imagine. They talked about art, about the difference between easy beauty and complex beauty, about how fashion could be both art and craft. James told her about his next show, Weaving Identities, which would look at how clothes build and break ideas of class, gender, and culture. I would love for you to be part of it, he said, not as an assistant, but as a partner, with pieces of yours, with your view. Someone who has lived in different worlds can offer ideas that us school people will never have. I don't know if I am ready for something like that. The question is not if you are ready, James answered with kindness. The question is if you want to be. And if the answer is yes, we will find the way. It was an invite, but it was also more than that. It was a bet, a belief in her power, a hand held out toward a future Lucy had stopped imagining. Yes, she said finally, and that small word held worlds of choice. I want to be. The weeks after the ball went by with a fast speed, and at the same time with a clear view. Lucy kept working at the Reed House, but something basic had changed. Not in how she did her tasks. She was still detailed, responsible, careful, but in how she felt while she did them. She was no longer a maid who had given up on her dreams. She was a fashion designer working temporarily in domestic service while she rebuilt her career. The difference seemed small, but it was huge. It was the difference between surviving and living, between existing and blooming. On Monday and Wednesday afternoons, after finishing her tasks at the mansion, Lucy took the subway to the museum. There, in a small office full of art books and photos, she met with James Monroe and his team. They checked ideas for the Weaving Identities show, talked about the story they wanted to build, looked at how the dress could be a historical paper, a political protest, and visual poetry all at once. James had given her a spot in the project, to create 3 pieces that showed different parts of her own experience. One that spoke of heritage, the knowledge passed down from her grandmother. Another that looked at invisibility, the feeling of being reduced to a function. And a third about change. Don't think about pleasing anyone, James told her while they checked sketches. Think about truth. The art that really hits is the one that comes from a real place, not from a safe place. Lucy worked on her designs at night, in her small room that had now become a makeshift studio. She had bought a natural light lamp, organized her materials in clear boxes, hung a board where she wrote down ideas and visual notes. The bed was always covered with fabrics, patterns, threads of different colors. The first design she finished was the one that showed heritage. It was a dress in earth tones, browns, tans, beiges, with sewing that copied patterns of traditional lace. But the new part was in the details. Every stitch was slightly imperfect, on purpose human, rejecting the machine perfect of factory production. In the hem there was sewn, in tiny letters almost invisible, phrases her grandmother used to say, "The hands that create never forget. In every stitch goes a piece of the soul." When she showed it to James, the man stayed silent for long seconds, just watching, thinking. "This is... Lucy, this is exceptional," he said finally. "It is not just a dress. It is a material poem. It is memory made real." On Thursdays, Lucy met with Sophie Hill at her small shop. Sophie was teaching her the practical parts of the fashion business, how to find real production costs, how to set prices that were fair but sustainable, how to talk to fabric sellers, how to build a personal brand without losing realness. Ethical fashion is not just about using organic cotton, Sophie explained while they checked spreadsheets. It is about paying fair wages, about transparency in the production chain, about creating pieces that last years instead of seasons. It is about fighting the urge to grow too fast at the cost of your values. Lucy took in every lesson like dry ground takes in rain. She took detailed notes in a notebook she always carried, asked questions, challenged her own ideas. She was learning that creative talent was only one part of the match. To have lasting success, she also needed a business view, money discipline, market understanding. "Do you know what your edge is?" Sophie told her one afternoon while they had coffee at a nearby bar. "You don't come from money. You don't have a money cushion that lets you fail without fallout. That will make you more careful, more strategic, more tough than many designers who start with everything fixed." On Fridays, Lucy worked with Edward Smith, going with him to consulting meetings with clients. She watched how he looked at the image of a boss getting ready for a promotion, how he guided a politician who needed to show power without losing being easy to talk to, how he helped a business owner in career change to redefine their visual show. "Clothes are language," Edward taught her. "Every choice says something. The cut says if you are traditional or new. The color sends energy or calm. The texture suggests being easy to reach or distance. Our job is to help people speak visually in a way that matches who they are and who they want to be." Lucy found she had a natural gift for this. She could look at someone and feel the gap between their inner self and their outer show. She could suggest small fixes that completely changed the impression someone made, changing the type of glasses, fixing the length of a skirt, choosing a slightly different tone of shirt. One of the clients, a quiet engineer who had just been made a project manager, told her after his session, "For the first time in my life, I feel that my look shows what is inside. I am not dressing up as a manager. I am simply being myself, but visible." Those words hit Lucy deeply, because that was exactly what she had felt herself, not changing into a different person, but finally becoming visible in her whole self. In the meantime, at the Reed mansion, things had changed in small but big ways. Chloe had started to pay real attention to the people who worked in her house. She learned the name of the gardener, Mike, who had spent 15 years caring for the roses, and asked him about his family. She found that the cook, Mary, had a daughter studying to be a vet and started to truly care about her progress. One morning, Lucy found Chloe in the kitchen making her own breakfast instead of waiting to be served. "Good morning," said Chloe, a bit clumsy still in this new way. "Good morning, Miss Chloe. Just Chloe, please," she corrected softly. "I've been thinking, would you tell me more about your grandmother, about what she taught you about sewing?" Lucy was surprised but agreed. While they had coffee together, an act in itself new in that house, Lucy talked about her grandmother Rose, who had learned to sew in a shop in the 50s. She told her how her grandmother made wedding dresses for rich ladies, but never felt lesser than them. "I have something they will never have," Rose used to say. "I know how to create beauty with my own hands." Chloe listened with real attention, her eyes shining with something that looked like respect. "I wish I had something like that," she said finally. "Something that made me feel useful, valuable for what I can do, not just for my last name." "You can create it," Lucy answered. It is never too late to learn, to grow skills, to find your goal. That talk was a turning point. Days later, Chloe joined the helper program they had talked about at the ball. She began to teach art history to young people from poor areas twice a week. At first it was hard. The kids looked at her with doubt, noticed her expensive clothes, her way of talking that showed riches. But Chloe kept going. "It is humbling," she told Lucy one afternoon, "but I think I need that humility. I need to understand what it feels like to be on the other side." Lucy nodded, seeing the real growth in the young woman who had once shamed her. One Tuesday afternoon, 4 months after the ball, while Lucy cleaned Mr. Reed's study, Mrs. Beatrice walked in with a firm step but soft face. "Lucy, stop that for a moment. We need to talk." Lucy felt a hit in her stomach. Had she done something wrong? Had she missed a task while focusing on her side projects? Mrs. Beatrice sat in one of the leather chairs in the study and pointed for Lucy to sit in the other. Not on the floor, not in a lower spot, but as an equal. "You have been with us 5 years," Mrs. Beatrice began, her voice full of feeling. "And in all that time, you have been more than a great worker. You have been a model of dignity, of keeping going, of grace under pressure. You have taught me as much as I hope I have helped you. Ma'am, you have been—" "Let me finish, please." Mrs. Beatrice raised a hand softly. "I have seen how these last weeks you have been making calls during your breaks, meeting people after work, getting in late at night, and working on designs until morning. I see the dark circles you try to hide with makeup. I see the tired way you move, but I also see the shine in your eyes." Lucy looked down, not with shame, but with the feeling of being seen so fully. "I know you are rebuilding your career," Mrs. Beatrice went on, "and I think the time has come for you to fly fully. You cannot serve 2 worlds at the same time, not without getting tired, not without losing your power." She held out a thick envelope. Lucy took it with shaking hands and opened it slowly. Inside was a check for a large amount equal to 8 months of pay, but there was also something else, legal papers. "It is a backing deal," Mrs. Beatrice explained. "My husband and I have decided to put money in your business as quiet partners. We don't want to control your art, we don't want to make choices. We just want to back you with money while you set up your shop. When you start to make a profit, you will pay back the money. No interest, no pressure, at your speed." Lucy felt the tears grow, hot and many. This time she didn't try to hold them. She let them fall freely down her cheeks, tears of thanks, of relief, of hope, of proof. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice broken by feeling. "Say yes. Say you accept this chance. Say you will give yourself leave to be all you can be." "Yes," Lucy answered, first in a whisper, then louder. "Yes, I accept." Mrs. Beatrice stood up and hugged Lucy, not as a boss hugs a maid, but as woman hugs woman, as a mother hugs a daughter who was not born from her but lives in her heart. "I am so proud of you, dear, so proud," Mrs. Beatrice whispered. "And I want you to remember something. When you have your own studio, when you are known as the bright designer you are, don't forget where you come from. Not with shame, but with pride. Because honest work is never shameful. What is shameful is how we treat those who do it." That night, Lucy began to pack her things. She did not have much to take from that room that had been her home for 5 years. Simple clothes folded with care, some books marked and read again, photos of her mother and grandmother in simple frames, the wooden box that kept her dreams made real. While she folded her last work uniform, the white apron she had used thousands of times, she did it with respect, with thanks. That uniform stood for survival, sacrifice, motherly love. It stood for the hard choices she had to make to care for her sick mother. There was no shame in that. There was only dignity in work well done, in love turned into action. She kept the uniform in a separate box. She would keep it, not as a sign of shame, but as a reminder of strength. That she had gone through the desert and had lived. That she had been bent, but not broken. The morning of her last day, Lucy got up early as always. She made breakfast for the Reed family one last time, putting the same careful detail she had always put. She organized the kitchen, cleaned the surfaces, left everything perfect. Not because she had to, she had already worked her last day, but because that was how she was. Whole until the end. Chloe appeared in the kitchen earlier than usual, still in pajamas, with messy hair and puffy eyes, as if she had not slept well. "Are you leaving already?" she asked with a small voice. "Yes, it is time." There was a heavy silence, full of all the not said during 5 years of shallow life, of all the lost chances for real link, of all the cruel words that could not be erased, but maybe could be forgiven. "Lucy, Chloe began, looking for the right words. "I am sorry for treating you as if you were invisible. I am sorry for laughing at you. I am sorry for thinking it was fun to humble you. I know, and I have forgiven you." "How?" Chloe looked at her with eyes full of tears. "How can you forgive me so easily? It was not easy," Lucy answered with honesty. "But forgiving you was the only way to free myself. Hate is a weight that I was carrying, not you. And I decided to let it go." Chloe came close and awkwardly hugged Lucy. It was a clumsy hug at first, of two people learning new ways of love, but then it became real, warm. "I want you to know something," Chloe said when they pulled away. "I am going to be different, not just with you, but with everyone. I joined that helper program. I'm going to teach art history to kids from poor areas, and when I feel like judging someone for their look or their job, I force myself to stop and remember this lesson." "That is all anyone can ask," answered Lucy. "That we learn from our mistakes, that we grow, that we are a bit better every day." "Can we stay in touch?" Chloe asked with shy hope. "Can we be friends?" Lucy smiled truly. "I would like that. I would like it very much." When the time came to leave, the whole Reed family was in the main hall. Mr. Reed, usually away and distant, shook her hand with strength and wished her success. The other workers of the house, Mary the cook, Mike the gardener, Rosa the laundry woman, hugged her with tears in their eyes. "You have been a model for all of us," said Mary. "You have shown us that we can be more than our job. Thank you for that." Mrs. Beatrice was the last to say goodbye. She took Lucy's face between her hands with motherly care. "Go and take the world, dear, and when you do, remember that you will always have a home here, not as a maid, but as family." Lucy nodded, unable to speak for the feeling that tightens her throat. She took her bag and her wooden box and crossed the door of the Reed mansion for the last time. The taxi was waiting outside. While she drove away through the tree-lined streets of the rich area, Lucy looked out the back window, seeing the mansion get smaller until it was gone. She did not feel sad. She felt thanks. Thanks for the lessons learned, for the strength grown, for the dignity kept even in the darkest times. And she felt something more powerful, hope. Because ahead, a future waited that she herself would build, with her own hands, with her own talent, with her own view. Finding the perfect spot for her shop took 3 weeks of heavy searching. Lucy went through dozens of spaces in different parts of the city, some too expensive, others too dark, others in spots that did not say the identity she wanted for her brand. Finally, she found it in a quiet corner of a busy area, on a stone street where bookstores, cafes, and art galleries lived together. The shop had been an old sewing store, and it still had the original dark wood shelves and the tile floor with blue and white shapes. When she walked in for the first time and saw the natural light coming in through the high windows, she knew she had found her place. It was as if the space had been waiting for her. "It is perfect," she told the real estate man, an older man who had noticed the shine in her eyes. "Are you sure? It needs a lot of work. The walls are peeling. The wires need fixing." "It is perfect," Lucy said again with belief. "I can see exactly what it can become." During the next 6 weeks, Lucy changed that space with her own hands and with help from her mother, Rosa, who had gotten well enough to help out. They painted the walls a creamy white that made the colors of the fabric stand out. They fixed the old shelves, sanding and painting the wood until it shone with new life. They put in ceiling rails from which they hung thin curtains that split the space without closing it, making different areas, customer area, work area, show area. Lucy designed every detail with plan. The model figures she bought at a second-hand store were made her own. Painted in soft tones, decorated with unique details. She put in full-length mirrors with old frames found at a market. She made a cozy waiting area with a yellow velvet sofa and low table where customers could have tea while they waited. On the walls, she hung black and white photos of her grandmother Rose in her Chicago shop next to images of traditional fabrics. She did not hide her roots. She celebrated them. The work table was wide, made of saved wood, covered always with patterns, scissors of different sizes, pin pads, thread spools organized by color like a painter's plate. There was a big sewing machine, bought second-hand but perfectly kept, and another old machine that had belonged to her grandmother, fixed until it worked perfectly. This last one she did not use for work, but as a piece full of meaning. The fabric rolls were organized on the old shelves by color and feel, silks that shone like water, organic cottons soft to the touch, linens with natural feel, deep velvets that took in the light. Every fabric had been picked personally, many from small ethical makers that Sophie had helped her find. In a special corner, she made a small library with books on fashion history, color theory, patterns, famous designers. She wanted her shop to be more than a place of business. She wanted it to be a space of learning, of hope, of real talk about fashion as art and as personal show. Sophie Hill came by often to advise her on business parts. She helped her set prices that showed the true value of pieces made by hand with ethical materials, explaining how to teach customers why a dress made with care cost more than one made in mass. "Your rivals are not the fast fashion stores," Sophie told her. "Your rivals are the high-end shops that sell unique designs, but your edge is that you offer total personal touch, personal link with the designer, and a real story behind every piece." Edward Smith helped her develop her personal brand. Together they made a simple but elegant logo. The letters LM joined in a way that also made a needle and thread. They made business cards on recycled paper with linen feel. They made a social media presence that was not about empty self-praise, but about sharing the creative process, teaching about ethical fashion, telling stories of the people behind the clothes. "Your story is your best asset," Edward told her. "Don't hide it. People link with truth, with real effort, with real getting through." James Monroe showed her to photographers and newspeople interested in new designers. A fashion magazine ran a story about her called "From Invisibility to Creation, the Story of Lucy Miller." The story did not make her experience as a maid look like a fairy tale, but it did not hide it either. It showed it as a key part of her identity, of her understanding of different social worlds, of her deep heart. The 3 pieces she made for the Weaving Identities show were shown with great success. The one that showed heritage, the dress in earth tones with traditional sewing, was bought by a costume museum for its main collection. The one that looked at invisibility was a full set made of thin ash-grey fabric with shapes that faded depending on the light angle, showing how certain people become invisible in certain social spots. And the piece about change was a 2-sided dress. On one side, simple and quiet in dull tones. On the other, bright with rich colors and textures, showing the many parts we all have. The fashion news people praised her work. One art critic wrote, "Miller does not just design clothes, she weaves stories, builds social notes, makes real deep feelings in fiber and form. She is a needed voice in modern fashion." But for Lucy, the most meaningful "well done" came from unexpected places. One afternoon, an older woman walked into the shop with shaky steps. She wore simple clothes, hands marked by years of handwork. "Can I help you?" asked Lucy softly. "I saw the story about you in the magazine," said the woman with a shaky voice. "I also clean houses. I have been doing it for 30 years, and when I was young I wanted to study interior design. But life has ways of pushing us off," finished Lucy with deep understanding. "Sit down, please. Tell me more." They spent 2 hours talking. The woman, whose name was Martha, told her story. Early death of a husband, 3 kids to raise alone, dreams put in mental boxes she never opened for fear it would hurt too much. "It is not too late," Lucy told her finally. It never is. Maybe you cannot study interior design now, but you can take a course, read books, practice in your own house. Creativity does not die with age. Martha left that day with bright eyes, taking with her not a bought dress but something more valuable, new hope. And Lucy understood that her shop could be more than a business. It could be a space of hope, a living reminder that paths are not straight lines, that second chances exist, that it is never too late to remember who you really are. The weeks went by, turning into months. The first customers came by word from Mrs. Beatrice and her friends. Then they started to come because of the magazine story, by blog reviews, by social media word. Lucy served every customer with personal care. It was not just about taking sizes and making a dress. It was about talk, about understanding who the person was, what message they wanted to send with their clothes, what made them feel powerful or comfortable or real. A boss who was getting ready for her first board meeting told her, "I don't want to look like a man to be taken seriously, but I also don't want to be seen as decoration. Is that balance possible?" Lucy designed her a two-piece suit in deep navy blue with perfect pants and a structured jacket, but with soft feminine details, an uneven neck, unique handmade buttons, an inner lining in coral silk that no one would see but the client would know was there. Silent but clear power. "I feel like myself, but the best version," said the boss when she tried on the set. "I am not dressing up. I am showing myself." A young woman getting ready for her wedding did not want the traditional white dress. She wanted something that showed her mixed heritage, American father, Indian mother, and her creative personality. Lucy spent hours talking with her, looking at photos of her family, listening to stories. Finally, she designed a dress that joined elements. The cut was inspired by traditional shapes, but the fabric had sewing that copied patterns from her mother's culture. The color was ivory with soft touches of blue. It was unique. It was her. "I feel this dress tells my story," said the bride when she tried it on, with tears falling down her face. "Thank you for truly seeing me." These experiences filled Lucy with a deep peace that had nothing to do with money or fame. It had to do with human link, with the honor of helping people express themselves visually, with the pride of witnessing their stories and turning them into fabric and form. Chloe had become a regular customer, and something surprising, a real friend. She came to the shop not just to order clothes, but to talk, to have tea, to share her experiences in the Helper program. "The kids are teaching me more than I teach them," she told one day. "One of them asked me why art matters when there are people without enough food, and I had to really think about my answer. I told him that art reminds us of our humanity, that beauty is not luxury but a need of the soul." Lucy smiled, seeing the real growth in the young woman who had once shamed her. "You are finding your goal, your way of giving to the world." "Thanks to you," answered Chloe. "You showed me that there is more in people than what we see on top, that we all have invisible layers of talent, of story, of value." 6 months after opening the shop, Lucy threw a small party. It was nothing flashy, just a close meeting with the people who had been key in her trip. Mrs. Beatrice was there, of course, who had been the first to believe in her when no one else did. Chloe was there, now changed into a more humble and aware young woman. James Monroe, Sophie Hill, and Edward Smith were there, her teachers and allies. Rosa was there, her mother, whose eyes shone with pride that cannot be said. She had also invited Mary, Mike, and Rosa, the other workers from the Reed House, because she wanted them to know that their dreams were also real, that their work also had dignity, that they also deserved to be seen in their whole self. The night was warm and perfect. They had put small lights on the ceiling of the shop, making a magic air. There was wine, food made by a small nearby place, and above all there was real talk, true laughs, real links. At one point in the night, Mrs. Beatrice asked for silence and raised her glass. "I want to make a toast," she said, "to Lucy, who has taught us that true elegance has nothing to do with designer labels or old last names. It has to do with how we treat others, with how we get up after falling, with how we keep our dignity even when the world tries to take it away." "To Lucy," everyone said together, raising their glasses. Lucy felt the warmth of thanks fill her completely. She looked around the space she had made with her own hands, at the people around her with real love, and knew for sure she had reached exactly where she needed to be. Later that night, after everyone left, Lucy stayed alone in her shop. She turned off the main lights, leaving only the small lights that made dancing shadows on the walls. She sat at her work table and opened the notebook, where she kept a diary of her creative work. On the first page she had written, the day she signed the rental paper for the shop, a quote from her grandmother. "True elegance does not come from what you wear, but from how you walk through the world, with dignity, with grace, with the sure feel that your value does not depend on the view of others, but on the truth you carry inside." Below that quote, she now added something new, her own words pulled from months of thought. "I have learned that job titles do not define people, that uniforms do not set value, that temporary situations do not dictate permanent ends. I have learned that we all carry invisible layers of talent, of story, of beauty, waiting for the right time to show. And I have learned that time comes not when the world decides to see us, but when we decide to show ourselves." She closed the notebook softly and went close to the model figure where the emerald green dress hung. The dress that had changed everything without really changing anything, because she had always been the same person. Only now, the world could finally see her. She touched it with respect, feeling the texture of the silk under her fingers, remembering the countless hours she had put into every stitch, every sewing, every fold. This dress was more than fabric. It was proof. It was strength. It was a silent call of unshakable dignity. "Thank you," she whispered to it as if the dress could hear her. "Thank you for reminding me who I am." She looked in the big mirror, that mirror that now fully showed the woman she had become. She did not see just a successful designer. She saw all the versions of herself: the heartful student in Chicago, the loving daughter who left her dreams to care for her mother, the maid who kept her dignity in the darkest times, the woman who dared to believe she deserved a second chance. All those versions lived together in her. All were real. All were key for the person she was now. She thought of all the people she had met in her trip, those who had shamed her and those who had raised her, those who had seen her and those who had ignored her. All in some way had helped her growth. Even Chloe, with her early cruelty, had taught her great lessons on toughness, on forgiveness, on the human power to change. She thought of the customers who came to her shop looking for more than clothes, looking for proof, expression, link. And she could offer them that because she knew well what it meant to be reduced, to be seen as less, to be invisible. She knew the power of being truly seen, of being truly valued. Outside, the city slept under a starry sky. The streets were quiet, only sometimes broken by laughs from a nearby bar, or the sound of steps of someone going home. Lucy turned off the last lights, picked up her bag, took one last look at the space that was now hers. Tomorrow she would come early to work on a new order, a graduation dress for a young woman who would be the first in her family to finish college. A story that hit Lucy deeply because she knew what it meant to break cycles, to redefine what's possible, to open doors that earlier people did not even know were there. As she stepped out into the cool night air, Lucy took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air that tasted like freedom, like power, like an endless future. She walked through the stone streets with a firm step, with head held high, with a light heart, because she had learned the most important lesson of all, that true change is not in putting on something new, but in taking off everything that stops us from being ourselves. It is not in changing who we are, but in daring to show who we have always been, waiting under the labels, under the uniforms, under the hopes of others. And Lucy Miller, designer, artist, survivor, dreamer, had finally shown herself fully, not in spite of her story but because of it, not denying her past but bringing it in, not ashamed of where she had been but proud of the path she had walked. Because in the end, dignity is not something that is given, it is something that is kept. It is the silent strength that keeps the soul straight, even when the world tries to bend it. It is the inner sure feel that you are worth it, no matter who sees it or denies it. And that sure feel, once found, cannot be broken. It is the most elegant clothing anyone can wear. It is the invisible dress we all carry, made not of silk or velvet. but of character, of being true, of self-love. Lucy had found it, and no one, never again, could take it from her.